Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of the How to Adult with Travis Walker podcast. This podcast is with the very knowledgeable Brett Lyle. She is a career coach. She is incredible. She drops so much knowledge in this episode. It's very jam-packed, so get ready, get excited, because we're about to learn a lot about the subject of networking. This is a very, very exciting episode. It's impacted my life a lot. I'm sure it's impacted yours as well. So get ready to learn some things. Make sure that you're following the podcast at How to Adult TW on Facebook and Instagram. And while you're listening today, go ahead and share the episode for all of your friends and family to see. With all that being said, y'all, let's get into the episode and learn how to adult. All right, we've made it to another show of the How to Adult with Travis Walker podcast, and we have an incredible guest today. Brett Lyle, how are you doing this morning?
I'm well. Thanks, Travis. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. I am really excited because I've been wanting to do this subject for a really long time because it had such a huge impact on my life, and I think it's had a huge impact on yours as well. So absolutely. I'm excited to get into this topic. But first, let's let the audience get to know you a little bit better. Who are you? Where are you located? What do you do for work? Those are the questions that I usually ask of all my guests. So what's going on with you?
Sure. My name is Brett Lyle. So first and foremost, what I'm doing today is career coaching and walking people through that journey, all the way from the very, very beginning of branding and personal development and goal setting through contract negotiations with a successful interview. And I also do consulting in EMS, so emergency medical services, working with fire departments and private ambulance companies all across the country, to basically specific to this recruiting and retention and all the things that make the job search process easier for my clients. So that's what I'm doing today. My professional career was in EMS. So I spent over a decade doing that. I'm born and raised in Texas, very loud and proud Aggie, Texas A&M, 2009, graduated in communication and English. So always in the sales and the talking space, and really executing on that now and helping other people use their words to get them what they want in their careers.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I love that. Your journey is really interesting. Can you talk a little bit more about your transition from the 9 to 5 to where you are now with primarily coaching?
Yes. So I just celebrated a year 2 weeks ago of working for myself.
Yay.
Yeah, so huge milestone. It's been absolutely petrifying every month, but just have to stay really grounded in what my goals are. And so it's been cool. I've been kind of self-coaching, if you will, through this transition and this process. But yeah, I'd worked for 3 different people in the industry, a lot of different markets. I'd done some traveling and kind of been there, done a whole lot of stuff in a very short period of time. And when I started in the career, like I said, I graduated in 2009. Yeah. So it was, Forbes said the worst year to graduate college since the Depression.
Wow.
And that was cool when I paid for school and student loans were going to be due soon. And I'm like, oh, I got to get a job. So I kind of landed in EMS. It was in a business development role. And it just served me, right? I did right by my career. I did all the right things I was supposed to do and should do. Right. And I'm really proud to say, I made 6 figures by 30 and was managing a team and traveling and doing all sorts of stuff. But I knew there was something missing. Right. And so I left the industry for a little while. I had a non-compete, meaning I couldn't work in the only industry I'd been in since I graduated college. Wow. And had to figure out what to do. And it was scary, petrifying. And I had to kind of go back to basics of all the things I was doing when I first graduated college, and networking and trying to figure out, what I should be doing and how to look for a job and how to position myself and how to tell my story.
Yeah.
And all of those pieces really kind of coming together. And now that's what I'm helping people do, because it's petrifying to not know where your next paycheck's going to come from or not know how you're going to pay bills. And I want to help other people not feel that way. I want people to feel empowered and have the tools well before they need them, so that if that thing happens, it's just like, okay, let's go.
Yeah. Wow, that is an incredible story. Not really the point of this show, but I'd love to just hear that piece of advice that from that specific story. What is that piece of advice before we get into our subject of networking?
Sure. Gosh, I think there's so many lessons learned from that, but don't wait until you need it.
Yeah. Wow.
Be proactive with your career and don't wait until you need a job to dive into those relationships. And don't wait until you need a job to think about what's important to you and what you value, right? Those are things that you should be doing while you're in your career.
Wow.
So if you're in a job and you're like, this isn't for me, rather than going straight to let me go look for a new job, stop and think, what do you want to do and what's aligned with what's important to you and your vision and your goals, before you jump into that next thing. So I think the piece of advice that I have that I kind of learned through was action's important, but sometimes it's about taking that big deep breath before you take an action and putting a plan together and then go.
Oh my gosh. So good. Already dropping some knowledge. I love that. I love that. Be proactive, take action after thinking about it. I think that that's a marvelous piece of advice. Wow. So I wanted this show to be a show that nudges at the importance of networking in general. We'll talk about specific types of networking, but how has networking played a role in your life specifically? We learned about your story just now. What role did networking play?
Every role. Every role. I will say every job that I've ever gotten, and I was thinking about this before I got on the podcast. Is this true? And I want to say every job I've ever gotten, barring, the hourly plug-in. I worked at Starbucks for a little bit. I didn't need to know anyone to apply to Starbucks, right. But some of the opportunities that I had in that position, even when, I got into the role, I only had because of the relationships I'd built. So every job that I've ever gotten, I was recruited into, which I'm really proud to say,
right.
But because of my network, it was always somebody who, I worked in the market straight out of college. I was in South Florida working in the market with a general manager for a private ambulance company, built a relationship with him, really created this kind of mentor-mentee space, and kept in touch with him.
Right.
And so he went on to do bigger and better things. He was a senior VPO, senior vice president of operations, and went on to do bigger, better things. We always stayed in touch. Well, a couple of years later, he called me. We were at a conference and said, hey, you've got the skill set. I've got this need. Are you interested? And tell me what it's going to cost me.
Wow.
Which is the coolest thing to hear.
Love that question.
Right? Yeah, me too. I loved that question. But it was because I had built that relationship with him and I had kept him in my close-knit circle. And that was why I got that job. And then when I was in that role, I was there for a couple of years and had met someone who needed some support on a consulting project, got to know them a little bit. And then later on, because of another relationship, they opened up a role and it was a promotion, and called and said, hey, do you know anybody? And then I had to work on self-advocating.
Right.
And yeah, I know someone.
Me.
me, pick me, right? And I had to go through that process, but it was because of my network. And it's always been so powerful that when I'm in need of something, whether that's a new job or a connection or a warm introduction to somebody in the professional space with a different company, right? Like I need someone for a contract or something in the role that I'm in. It's always been, let me go to my network and see who has relationships and tap into that.
Right. Wow. Okay. So were you intentionally growing and nurturing your network the whole time? Or was there this pivotal moment of, I need to do this. This is really important. I'd like to know kind of when that spark happened and in being intentional about growing and nurturing your network.
So I shared with you, I went to Texas A&M.
Yes.
And if you follow college anything, you know that Texas A&M is known for our network.
Right.
So they're called the 12th man. And so it's been ingrained in me well before even college that my network, and before this was my network of A&M family, all people that went to A&M in my literal family, it was that power of that network in my application to college.
Right.
So happenstance, it was the year that I was applying to college that they removed that as a like a line item on a scorecard for if I was going to get in.
Yeah.
That was frustrating, but it had been that lineage and having family that went to the school could literally help you get into college. And so that has been ingrained in me since well before I graduated and I was in my professional space. There was definitely a transition, when I was in the professional field, when I got on LinkedIn and I started realizing how powerful the internet is. Right?
Super powerful.
Like, that you can meet people and you can connect with them and build real relationships just like you would at a social event online.
Right.
So I am a Gemini. I am a middle child. I am a talker and an extrovert and ENFP and all the things. So I'm not uncomfortable meeting people and going out and doing those in-person events.
Right.
But it's so stinking convenient to be able to just sit right here on this phone and just meet people and build relationships. And so I think I've learned more and more over the years with all these different spaces and ways that my network has been able to provide for me, how powerful it really is.
Right. And I feel like people feel very awkward. I think there's stigma around utilizing the network that you've grown. Maybe organically you've grown a network after, a long career, or just being an extrovert, you just naturally grow a network. But then you feel awkward when utilizing that network. Have you seen that, or am I making that up?
No, I call that with my clients, that's the making the ask. So really there's 4 steps. I don't know if you want to dive into that now, but there's 4 really steps into building what I call your productive professional network.
Yeah.
So the 4 steps to building your productive professional network are: 1, the connection and engagement. So you have to meet people, you have to come across people, whether that's in person and someone, in passing, or you're sitting at a restaurant or you're sitting at a bar watching a sports game and talking to the person next to you and go, hey, we should keep in touch. And you connect right then and there. You add each other on Instagram, or whether it's LinkedIn or Instagram or wherever, right? TikTok, now YouTube Shorts. There's a ton of ways to connect. But that initial connection has to happen to build your network.
Right.
That's just the basics. And then that network. So this network is this opportunity of 7 billion people across the world.
Right.
You can connect with almost anyone these days. I mean, narrowing it down in the US, almost everybody's online somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so that connection. The second space is the network. So adding them, so taking that in-person meeting and connecting, or that interaction on a comment section on whatever communication platform you're on, taking that from we're having a little bit of banter or we're having a back and forth conversation to let me send them a friend request, or let me personalize an invite and actually connect with them. So that's 2, is going from that engagement to making them part of your network.
Right.
That's not where it stops. You can have, and I'm sure there's people that have millions of connections or followers, or they get millions of views or likes, but they don't interact with those people. They don't have relationships.
Right.
So the next stage that's super important is transitioning your network of people that you're connected to that are in your space to relationships.
Right.
And that happens on the everyday. That happens with the birthday messages and the work anniversaries and the how's your week goings, and those kind of things. And then once you've done enough of that person, if they're a good alignment, they're going to be interested in what you're doing. You're interested in what they're doing. You've identified those commonalities and those common grounds. Mm-hmm. And then you can transition them to really what might be compared to a mentor-mentee or just a peer support group. That's what I'm calling your productive professional network.
Right.
So that's that group of people that really 3 things happen. When you call, they answer. Oof. Literally. Mm-hmm. When you tell them what you're looking for, they answer the call, proverbially, right. And that they're interested in the outcome. If they don't meet all of those things, so they might just be someone who's a relationship, or maybe they're just in your network. But getting to that point in that small group, starting with your interactions, engagements, down to your network, who do you connect with? Who did you build relationships with? Who can you connect with? And then this small circle, which are not going to be a lot of people. It's going to be a small knit group of
Right.
people, but those are the people that you're the most comfortable with. So that when you have an ask and you're like, okay, I got to be vulnerable, that's my people. I'm going to them first because they're invested in my success. Maybe it just makes them feel good and that's who they are as a person
Mm-hmm.
to see other people successful. Maybe they are in a space where they find value out of what I'm going to put out and I'm asking for them to share it. So maybe they work for a company that I'm interested in working for, and I'm going to go to them and ask if they'd be willing to refer me. But that ask is still going to have some value for them, right? Maybe they get a referral bonus.
Right.
So that's what I think about when you think about networking. It's not just about adding people to your online platforms or being able to talk to someone or have a conversation. It's about how do you really build relationships over time that you can serve and that will serve you.
Wow. Okay. That was a really good overview of your four steps. I'm interested in the three groups of people that you mentioned. Do you think there's a role for all three of those groups in utilizing a network effectively and efficiently, right? We've got the just broad connections, we've got the relationships, and then you've got your people that are in your court. Do you think there's a role for each of those people, or do you think that you should constantly be moving a certain amount of people through that process, weekly, monthly, whatever it is?
Yeah, pipeline of network. Interesting. I love that. Short answer, it's what works for you.
Right.
I don't think that the Mahal of networking is definitely your productive professional network, but there's going to be people that are just not in that group. So there's going to be people that are in your network and you're going to run into each other and you're going to see each other in professional environments or online because you're sharing a lot of the same content, but they're just fine right there. Absolutely, they're just fine right there. And there's some value to having connections. If you're talking about positioning yourself as an expert or your personal brand, or if you're a leader of an organization, your organizational brand, there is value in just having connections, having followers, having likes. And I know this is a little all over the board, but there's also some financial value
Sure.
on a lot of these platforms. When you have visibility, when your reels go viral, or when your content goes viral, now you can make money based on followers and subscribers and views. So there are some values absolutely at every stage of that process.
Right, right. That's really interesting. I found in my journey, I went through a career transition at the end of 2021, and where this episode really came from is that networking completely changed that journey. I was about 90 applications in before I started utilizing networking effectively. And when I started that, I had a job within a month. So I feel very strongly about this. So I think networking is an incredibly, incredibly powerful tool. So what have you found in your experience in terms of how networking is so powerful? Powerful is kind of a broad term, but how has it been so powerful in your journey specifically?
People want to help people. When you really come down to it, networking is sales, is psychology, is human basics. People want to feel connected. People need community. These are the things that we know from what is this like? Hierarchy, Maslow's hierarchy of
Right.
needs, right? Like we all studied that. There's a pyramid, and community and belonging and sense of purpose and a sense of drive. So, people want to help. For me specifically, networking is about building a lot of different things. So my network has been really supportive for me, as I move through my career. But even now, I'm building my business.
Right.
And my network is quick to share my content, and they're quick to like or engage in my content. And so they're helping me not only professionally, they're helping me build my visibility. They're helping me build my brand. I just rolled out a membership program. It's I'm calling it concierge membership program. So basically it's a monthly subscription. Once a quarter, you get a 30-minute session. I give you access to any training that I do, some education stuff. But as I'm building that, it's so cool. I put it out. I said, okay, this is my, online community first. I'm only accepting X number of people. this is kind of the minimum, but tell me what you think it's worth to you.
Right.
I'm building a product, right? I have no clue what it's worth. And the definition of value is what people are willing to pay you for your product.
Right.
So I could say it's valued at, $1,000. And if I can't get anybody to pay that, it's not worth $1,000. It's worth whatever people are willing to pay. So I went to my network and said, hey, what is this worth to you? And they've helped me with my pricing. Now I know, okay, based on these people, this is the feedback I got. So I use my network and transitioning. They're like my little focus group.
Right.
So I put something out to them and go, hey, 13 people that are invested in my success. These are those people for me because they're the early adopters. They didn't really know what the program was going to be because I hadn't built it yet.
Right.
I'm just saying, hey, can you just trust me and know that I'll add value? And I promise I'll do that for you. And 13 people showed up of my goal of 13 and said, yes, Brett, we'll invest in you. And honestly, Travis, I know that all but probably 4 of them just did it to support me.
Love that.
They're like, yep, we can help you build your business because you're doing cool stuff, right? So there's a lot of value. Some of it's financial, some of it's just moral support. But for me personally, it's about that community more than anything is that, I work remotely all the time.
Right.
And I always have because I've been in business development roles. So I'm always out and about visiting facilities, talking to customers, going to client meetings, but it's a lonely world.
Right.
And my network has served me in ways emotionally with that feeling of belonging and community through helping me build my business and establishing pricing and tell me what's valuable to them and what they care about and how they consume content so I can deliver things that are valuable for them. And then to the nuts and bolts of it, of when I needed a job and when I need to get introduced to somebody that they know. So like every step of the way, my network has been valuable for me. And I know that it can be valuable for anyone.
Right.
And that's why I teach it. Right.
Right. That's incredibly important. Right. And so I think that as I was doing research on this episode, I found that there was a lot of talk about networking really becoming a buzzword. In education, which is the field I'm in, a really big buzzword that we have is self-care. We throw that around and then don't really define it. And so I think that, in the greater world, networking has become a buzzword as well. So how do you take that and make productive relationships with people for a professional purpose, with knowing that just saying networking it might turn somebody off automatically? How do you do that in a practical way?
When I first started building this, I asked my community because words matter.
Right.
Like that's what I studied in college, communication. So if you're in education, you get it. When you say certain words, it triggers certain things for people. And so I asked my network, what does networking mean to you? When you hear this word, what comes to mind? And invariably, I knew I would get this. I got, it's stressful. It's sales pitchy. It's cheesy. It's skeezy. It's all the easies, right? Like it's challenging and difficult. It gives people anxiety. And then there was the other group of people that said it's valuable. It helps expand your knowledge base. It helps, with supply chain things and all these other things. But a lot of people are afraid to network because the perception that it's pushy or it's 1980s sales carsman, sales car
sales.
That was
perfect.
I don't know. They're afraid. So they're afraid if you're coming to them and you want to connect, it's because you're going to immediately ask them for something. And so that's why it's super important when you're networking to go slowly. And I have a concept I call like ping pong communication. So when you're connecting with someone, you're not straight out the gate, just, hey, nice to meet you. Here's what I need, because that's the fastest way for people to avoid connecting. Number one, you train people that if they connect with you and your title is X, that you're just going to try to push sales on them or whatever that thing is. And the other thing is they just won't connect with you, or they connect with you and they're waiting for you to try to pitch them.
Right.
So it's super important as you're building your network and as you are intentional about creating these engagements and transitioning them through the process, that you're very mindful of that perception. So even by reaching out, you've got to be very, very clear with what you're looking to do. So for example, hey, Travis, I came across your profile because of our mutual connection in so-and-so. Mm-hmm. I'm actively looking to expand my network for people that are podcast hosts. I'd love to connect if you're open to it.
Right.
So I've scripted it out. So I'm giving you a couple things. One, I'm giving you an out. It's okay if you don't want to connect. I get it. It's only if you're open to it. Right. It's not personal. That's just how you manage your online space. I've told you why I want to connect. And so if you come across that, you're like, I don't want to just expand my network to expand my network, and I'm fixing to get out of the podcast business, or I don't want to talk about podcasts, or whatever that thing is, right? Like, you have every right to not accept my request, or you can accept it and say, hey, so glad to do this. Do you also do a podcast? And now we've got something to talk about.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think that especially like in the LinkedIn space, there are a lot of different types of people and a lot of different models that people, use effectively or misuse completely. I'm always skeptical when I get a message on LinkedIn, just because I think I'm about to get sold on something. But I do it as well. I reach out to people. I reached out to you on LinkedIn to do the podcast. So I think that they're effective tools, but utilizing them correctly, I didn't use it correctly. So, how do people utilize, reaching out to people with the specific purpose of networking? If it's online or if it's in person, people go to conferences with the purpose of networking. How do people effectively, try to connect with people?
Just to be clear about their intentions.
Right.
I think with everything in this world, when you're honest with yourself, you can be honest with other people. When you're honest with people, you create honest relationships. Right. So what we don't care about, Travis, is connecting with the person who's just going to ghost you or disconnect with you the next day. We don't care about that.
Right.
Like, when I'm talking to my clients, don't stress about the people that don't connect. Don't stress about the people that don't respond, because you will stress, because everybody manages their network and each of their platforms differently. So for example, I've got a YouTube page that's public. I've got my personal LinkedIn, a coaching page, and a private group. I've got 2 Instagram accounts. One's public, one's private, Facebook, company, and private.
Right.
Right. There's so many places to connect with people. The one space that I've held for my friends and only people that I know is my personal Facebook.
Right.
And so a lot of times people will find me on one space, and if they use Facebook a lot, they'll ask to connect with me there. It's super important that I explain to them, hey, I don't know if you know this or not, but I keep this space for my personal friends and family members. I'd love to connect with you on this platform or this platform, and where I have my professional content and connections. Right. So being really clear about what and why and how gives you an ability, one, to be kind, because clarity is kind.
Right.
People don't like to feel like they don't know, or if they just get denied, that feels personal and it hurts. So as you're building your relationships, just practice being really, really intentional and succinct with what you're looking to get out of it, or what your boundary is related to it, and then connect or don't connect based on those things, and just stay true to yourself.
Right. That was really good advice. And I think also another portion of this is, conferences or like physical meeting in person. People invest a ton of money in conferences and going out and meeting people. What's your feeling like that? Is that a dead practice, or is that a real practice that is still very, very effective? What's your feelings on that?
Yes. I think everybody has this feeling generally about this huge transition from, during the pandemic when people were working from home and having to learn these online skills. that transition has really gotten people a lot more comfortable with things online. And a lot of people that weren't online before now are.
Right.
So there's a ton of opportunity online that didn't exist. And there's a huge transition on all these platforms from just pictures or just text to video. So there's a lot of effort and energy around how do you make the online experience feel personable,
Right.
and feel one-on-one and feel live. That's a huge, there's lives on every platform. And so I think there's a general understanding that we have to see each other's faces,
Right.
and we have to connect as people. I mean, you can tell I talk with my hands all the time, but if I was here like this, with my arms crossed or my hands on my hips, it's going to come across differently. And that's one of the big things about communication is, I guess if I can land my plane there, all networking comes down to is effective communication.
Right.
And effective communication is based on not just the message and the sender and the recipient, but the context and the medium.
Mm-hmm.
And so when there's a failure in one of those pieces of effective communication, things go sideways. So to say there's a ton of value to in-person, even with all the video, even with all the way we can connect virtually and live, being able to sit down with someone and share a cup of coffee and see how they interact with the barista, or, if they open the door for you or they don't, or how they look at other people, engage with, all of those things are important for us as humans as we learn to build trust, is to see how they engage with the world around them. And that's truly the definition of a personal brand. Your brand is how you show up to the world.
Right.
So there is this inevitable distrust that's been created over the last handful of years because we don't know people. As much as I can pull this up and go live and show you video, I'm only showing you one room of my house, right? And I'm only showing you the highlight reel, and I'm only showing you the things that I want you to see.
Right.
And I may not want you to see my real face. So I'm going to throw on all the filters or whatever that thing is. And so because of this transition from in person, where we can really learn people and read them, we have to trust that they're bringing forth their true self online. And that disparity can be really tricky. So I think there's huge value still, even despite the ability to connect virtually, of building relationships in person and going to events and shaking people's hands and just showing up physically and being present versus an online presence.
Right. Wow. I love how you just connected all of those things, because I think it's really important. And kind of sticking with that same type of conversation, do you think people should network all the time, or should they just network when they're unhappy in their current position? I think a lot of people do the latter, but I think it actually is probably all the time. But what do you say?
Sure. So one of the things I said earlier is connect when you don't need anything. There's a ton of principles when I'm talking to my clients, but that goes back to that sales pitch perspective. Is if the first time this person out the gate is like, hey man, cool, let's connect. You're like, yeah, sounds good. And they're immediately like, hey, can you come pick me up? Or, hey, can you do this? Or, hey, like, what's your immediate response in real life?
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Like, who is this person? Right? Like, it's off-putting. Like, and that's the thing, that people get so wrapped up in online, they forget it's not that different than regular social interactions. Right. I would not walk up to someone I have never seen in my whole life and ask for something. I would never do that. Right. If I'm in a conference and I'm in a space, or if I'm in a job fair, even as much as at a job fair, I wouldn't walk up to someone without asking them about them, without introducing myself, with having a little bit of even some small talk before I say, hey, I want to work for your company. Do you think you can help me do X? They're like, well, bro, like, who are you? Right? Yes. Slow down. And so I think that's the message, is that as people are thinking about networking, it's not different from a process perspective online as it is in person. When you do that, you can build those real relationships. So no, you should not wait until you're unhappy. You should always be networking. But I think really thinking through, and sometimes we need to reshape how we think about networking, because you're networking every day.
Right.
Every day. You stand in line at Starbucks and you ask the person in front of them what they ordered because you're trying to decide what you want and what sounds good. Or you open a door for someone when you're leaving the gas station and you say, hey, thanks, man. Or there's so many exchanges that we have. And so those are those interactions and those connections. If you know what you want and need out of your network and relationship, you're going to share that a whole lot earlier on. And networking can then be the 10-second conversation on the elevator or the 30-second exchange, about what's going on in life, or somebody's playing a video and you overhear it and go, oh, hey, that sounds cool. What is that?
Right.
And you're having a conversation and now you're like, shoot that to me. And now they're in your DMs and you have an ability to connect with them directly. That's networking.
Right.
So every day is the answer.
I think it's a great answer. And as you were speaking, I was thinking of, I spent some time in direct marketing and hated it. And
that's cold call sailing for me, and check, please.
Yes. And so I think about it and I'm like, do people treat networking like direct marketing, where you're standing at the mall, you're walking through the mall and somebody's offering you to try out some lotion? No, I don't want lotion. I want to walk through the mall.
Right.
And what I'm hearing from you is really it's an ongoing relationship, but I see more of people treating networking like that direct marketing that everyone hates.
Yes.
What do you think?
And I think you have to go back to understanding the context, understanding the platform. So whichever platform you choose to engage on that you're trying to network, and that's something that's super important when I'm talking to my clients. The first thing I ask them is, where are you active and how do you use the platforms?
Right.
So we're talking specifically about online networking. If I don't use Facebook personally for building my business because that's not where my clients would be, right? I mean, maybe. So I'm a little bit unique because I do coaching and I coach anyone and everyone. Yeah. But for me, I'm coaching career development. So there's an obvious alignment with LinkedIn there. However, there's all sorts of people that complain about their jobs and, have this hashtag life goals on Instagram or on other platforms or TikTok. And so tapping into those people in the right places at the right time with the right message is really important. If I'm on LinkedIn and I'm coming to somebody who is completely unrelated and I'm asking them about their advice on, I don't know, raising kittens, they're going to be like, what? I'm not here for that. I'm here for professional things. Or if I'm posting pictures of my food, like the old school Insta, they're not interested in that because that's not why they're there.
Right.
And so adversely or oppositely, I don't know. When you're on Instagram, I'm not going to send people my resume on Instagram because it's not the right platform for that.
Right.
So I think it's really important in the beginning to identify what's your goal for networking and what's the right space for the type of networking you're looking to do. If it's building your business, it's one thing. If it's building your personal brand, it's another. If it's creating and finding mentors in the industry you want to be in, that's another. If it's because you want to knowledge share and you want to expand your community of people that know something about this thing you love, then that's another platform. So going back to your intentions and understanding what's your goal, and then what's the space for that goal, that medium, right? And now you can find the right recipient and send the message in a clear, concise way in the right context, whatever that space is. You're going to have a better chance at effective communication and getting that outcome that you're looking for.
Right. I think that's so important. The platform is really important. There's a time and a place for everything, right? And there's a time and a place for this type of conversation as well. I think that's totally, totally fair. What benefits have you seen of networking with when you're content in your career? So you're content in your career, you're happy with where you're at. but you're still actively networking and you're still nurturing that network. What benefits have you seen or do you see in that practice?
Nurturing is the right word.
Yeah.
That's the space where you're relationship building. And people, again, everybody uses it differently, but it's kind of a non-threatening space. When you're happy, you can only go up from there.
Right.
I mean, when you're not happy, you can only go up from there too. But when you're in that space where, hey, I'm not looking for a job, I love where I am. My question to you would be, what's your professional goal? What are you looking to do? Just because you're not actively looking for a job doesn't mean, again, that your network couldn't serve you in a different way. So maybe that's about becoming a thought leader.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's positioning yourself as an expert. Maybe that's in your role. Maybe it's meeting and understanding your clients better, or understanding the companies that you work with. There's a lot of powerful tools available at our fingertips at all times, that whatever your professional goal is, you can achieve it and get help from your network in achieving that more efficiently and more effectively every day.
Right. I love that. So how is networking specifically, and we've talked about this a little bit, but how has your networking specifically changed and improved your professional journey, right? You said you've never really applied for a job. You've been recruited for positions. What are some other things that really have just you attribute specifically to networking in your journey specifically?
Okay, let's be very clear. I have applied to plenty of jobs
sure.
and been through plenty of interviews and had plenty of rejections, plenty of that. I have gone through any of that.
Okay.
My big transitions were ultimately down to people that I knew. So I attribute it to that, but don't be fooled to think that I just have had this easy journey, because it's not been that at all. And that's frankly why I've been able to build what I have, because every time I go through a process, I'm over with my little notepad and my pen and going, okay, what do I need to think about? How did I prepare for this interview? How did I navigate this negotiation? How did I build whatever? And I'm constantly looking at process improvement and basically testing hypotheses.
Right.
So I've created these forms, and I literally copy paste that same thing to everyone in my network. Hey, here's how I came across your profile, or here's how I met you. Once I meet them, it was nice meeting you at X. I would love to follow up with you because Y, if you're open to it. And then I have that connection. But the question that you asked me was...
It was, other than the jobs that you've gotten, how has networking improved your journey or improved your life?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, so obviously professionally in the career transitions and with just warm handoffs and business relationships that I didn't have before. But really, I have been on podcasts. You and I are a testament to that. I've connected with people all over the country, and I've known them, air quotes, for years and never met them.
Right.
It's so powerful. So I think it just goes down to, I'm sorry I don't have a direct answer, but networking has helped me in every way. I'm building my business in my career when I was happy, in my career when I wasn't happy. It's network, it's community, it's functionality of getting tasks accomplished, and being able to make that ask and say, hey, I came across this role. I see that we have a mutual connection, or someone that works there. Would you be willing to do a warm handoff, introduce me to them in a joint message? Or would you be willing to share my resume? Or would you be willing to look at my resume?
Yeah.
Someone in the industry, someone in the space you want to be in, those people are hugely resourceful, and they're a huge resource and hugely valuable at a lot of different stages. So I think if there's one piece of advice I'd like to offer, it's whatever you think about networking, open your mind.
Yeah.
It's so much more than you think it is today.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I love that answer. Very good. So I'd love to kind of dive into, we talked before we started the recording, but I'd love to hear your favorite way to network, and the reasoning behind that. And also I'd love to hear your least favorite and your reasoning behind that as well. What is your answer to that? I think everybody has a different answer, but what's yours?
Yeah. So I love the in-person stuff because I think it's fun to read a room and watch the way people interact. And that's my favorite. I love the in-person stuff. And I get a kick out of the in-person events a lot of times because I'm watching for behaviors and certain actions to kind of notice. And so my brain it's probably my undiagnosed ADHD. Like, oh, this person, and I've given them character types. They've got archetypes in my networking course.
Yeah.
So there's like the never leaves the food table guy, and there's the war story guy, and there's the click group people,
Right.
and there's the isolator, and so there's these person types, and we all go in and out of these person types based on different environments where I may be really comfortable in one place, and when I know I'm the expert in the room, I'm the war story guy. So if your goal is to network and meet people and expand your connection, you want to avoid me at all costs because I'm going to suck you in and we're going to talk for 20 minutes and we're really going to get to know each other. But that's relationship building, not networking, right? So you'd want to avoid me. And so I love the in-person stuff because even myself, I find that I go in and out of certain character types based on the room.
Right.
And what the goal is and who else is there. And, am I dressed appropriately? If I'm way overdressed, rarely do I underdress because I think that's always better over than under.
Right.
And sidebar, wear layers because then you can remove, right? Like
yes.
Take a jacket that you can take off so that if you're overdressed, you can solve that, but you can never add a jacket if you didn't bring
right.
one. But so I love the in-person stuff because you just learn so much about people and I get a kick out of it just watching people's interactions because there's always an awkward social interaction.
Always.
And it's usually me. It's usually me. I'm the person that will introduce the same person 3 times or, just, I don't know. I'm by the food. I'll get something on my clothes. I am definitely that person. Yeah. And so I think it's super fun to go into an in-person networking event with the idea that it's a social experiment and it's not going to go perfectly. And when you go into it with that mindset that it's a social experiment and you're going to see what works and you're going to do something that maybe you've never done before and you're going to put yourself out there a little bit and you're going to see if it works.
Right.
And you're going to see how it feels and you're going to work through that fear of I don't want to ask to connect. I can have a great conversation, but taking it to that next, hey, let's exchange information is really uncomfortable for some people. So my favorite is definitely hands down the in-person stuff, the specific networking events, because it's fun to watch people watch.
Right.
And it's just entertaining. I mean, it's just entertaining for me, for others, for all the reasons. So that's my favorite.
Love that. So have you come up with a least favorite? What is your least favorite?
Elevators.
Yes.
Elevators. They're the worst.
Why is that?
It's so awkward.
Yes.
So awkward. You don't know how long you have, but max you probably have a minute or 2.
Right.
You're going to have some social exchanges with did you push the button? No. Are you getting off here? Is this your floor? So you really have it's hard to have a healthy, productive conversation, but it's such a huge opportunity.
Right.
So especially when you're talking about going to conferences or being in a space where you're going to literally run into people, you have such an opportunity to capture them. You have a minute of one-on-one time, sometimes with the biggest person at the conference.
Right.
By happenstance. And so if you've got an opportunity and you've got a goal, you would be a fool not to take the opportunity to engage, at least to engage and interact. And then, so it can be super, super valuable, but it's so awkward. And so I always stumble through that. My advice is to engage as quickly as possible. Don't wait till you're at the second floor to say, hey, how's the day going? Smile when you come on. As you come on, say, hey, how are you? And see if they engage.
Right.
And if they don't, no big deal. If they do, now you've maximized your time with them. And minimum, even if you don't connect with them and take it from that engagement to that network connection, now you've had an exchange. So if you run into them a second time, now you've got something to talk about.
Right.
oh yeah, we met in the elevator earlier. How was your conference? Or you have a little bit of something. So if you think about networking again as always kind of planting the seed for the next thing, and then give it some space and let it grow.
Love that.
But elevators are petrifying.
That's totally fair. I think when it comes to networking, my biggest fear is coming off as not genuine, or not genuine, immediately being written off as trying to sell you something, or trying to get something from you. And I think my defense mechanism to that is being very direct. Whether it's on LinkedIn or if it's in person, I tend to be very direct, and that's my defense mechanism to not seeming genuine. Do you have any like fears with networking, or any defense mechanisms that you can think of that you kind of deal with that fear with? What do you think?
I think most people, because they're afraid of that sales pitch, you go the opposite direction that you do, Travis, and they just don't connect.
Wow.
And so they let that fear be debilitating.
Mm.
And my advice there is it's okay to be afraid. I mean, like with anything, it's okay to be afraid. Everyone's afraid. But the same emotion that is fear is excitement.
Mm.
And the same emotion that is, anxiety is excitement. And so when you think about these debilitating emotions that we have, social anxiety or fear of rejection, or my blind side, or coming off as, for me, mine is self-promoting. That's kind of the dark shadow of being confident and assertive and outspoken, is that you come off self-promoting, that you're always trying to tell people how cool you are, right? And it's not my intention, but understanding what those fears are that you carry, and then managing them, and just knowing that it's okay to be afraid of that. Do it anyway.
Right. Yeah.
Do it anyway. Because inaction, I mean, if you look at any leader, I mean, all the big leadership coaches, life coaches, the Tony Robbins, the John Maxwells, they're all saying the same thing, which is action, do something. And so it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be concerned. It's okay to do all those things. Do it anyway.
Right.
And I would say, on the second step of that is, if it's not working, try something else. If it's working, you're not doing it wrong, no matter what you feel. And so your feelings and facts are not the same. So I may feel like, okay, my feeling is that I'm too direct, or I'm pushy. And if I'm sending this message and I'm being really succinct and I'm being direct, like you said you do, and I'm getting responses, it's not wrong.
Right.
It's working. So I just need to let go of that fear, because it's working. If I start getting pushback, or I'm not getting responses, or people are not connecting with me, it's not working. And so that's when you really have to think about this again as like a social experiment. Let me try this thing. Let me be consistent in my practices. Try this thing. I'll try it for a little bit. And then I'm going to look back on it, and I'm going to really do some analysis. Did it work? Did it not work? And what pieces of it worked, or what pieces of it didn't work. And then I'm going to make a new plan.
Right.
I'm going to re-strategize, and I'm going to do something else. So if it works, then let go of all that. If it doesn't work, maybe it's because you were director pushy. Maybe it's something completely unrelated, but try something else.
Wow. I love that. I love the dialogue we've had. I love the advice that you've given. I think this is really just fantastic. But, knowing that everyone's imperfect, what have I missed? Is there anything else that we need to know when it comes to effectively networking?
Be authentic.
Right.
I think you just said one of your fears is people don't think it's real. And again, don't worry about what other people think, because I have a coach that I use for building my business, my online business. Shalene Johnson is her name. She and her husband have built multiple $1 million companies, and I do an online course with them called Marketing Impact Academy. Love it. But the biggest thing that she talks about is your lifer. So this is the person that's going to show up. And when you look at, Dean Graciosi, or any of these people who are teaching you how to build a business and how to build your online presence or your trust in your brand and your personal brand or your business. It's all about being authentic, because the people that get it are going to show up, and the people that don't get it are not going to show up. But the you that you're going to teach and coach and do better for is you from a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so don't worry about the people that are going to think poorly of you, or they're not going to connect, or they're going to think you're pushy. Don't worry about those people. They're not your people.
Right.
Again, those people are the 7 billion. Maybe they're your 3,500 connections, your network. But if there's a barrier between building that network and building those relationships, those are not your people, and it's okay. They're going to fall off. So that's why I always go back to focus on building your small knit group of people that get it, because those people are going to accept you as you, and you don't have to worry about showing up or the perceptions of. Just get that out of your mind. Those aren't your people.
Right. Wow. I think that's fantastic. So, Brett, where can people learn more, ask questions? Where should they go to find you? Obviously, it's not Facebook, because we already know that. Where is the place?
Because you already know. Brett Lyle Coaching everywhere. So it's BRETT coaching. That's my email at Gmail. That's my YouTube channel. And I do have a ton of resources online. So check out my Instagram. I do what they call kind of it's educational, but entertainment, like edutainment.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of like kind of interesting reels that also have some education in it. Try to keep it short and sweet. Obviously on YouTube, on LinkedIn, Brett Lyle Coaching everywhere. So find me, connect me wherever. My website is brettlylecoaching.com. And there's a form if you want to connect with me. I do free 30-minute consultations to see what people are looking for and how I might be able to help. So any of those places you can reach me anytime.
That's amazing. Well, thank you. Go look at all of her resources. Also, go follow the podcast at How to Adult TW on Facebook and Instagram. We are going to learn how to adult together.